The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any Earth stadium. Hundreds of alien species filled the curved seats that rose like mountain slopes around the central platform. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline bodies that caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns, occupied the highest seats. Below them sat the Krillians, whose tentacles moved constantly as they communicated through color changes. The insect-like Vorthak clicked their mandibles in what passed for conversation among their kind. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood alone on the human platform, a small figure surrounded by beings who viewed her species as nothing more than primitive newcomers. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago, making humans the youngest members of the galactic community. Most species have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The human representative may now present their case, announced Supreme Counselor Zerath, a being whose body seemed to be made of living shadow. The translator device in Sarah's ear converted the alien sounds into English, though it couldn't hide the condescension in the tone. Sarah cleared her throat and stepped forward. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I come before you today because the Dominion Empire has invaded 3 human colony worlds. They have killed thousands of innocent civilians and enslaved many more. We ask for the Council's intervention according to Article 7 of the Galactic Charter. A ripple of what Sarah recognized as laughter moved through the assembly. The Dominion Empire controlled over 200 star systems and commanded a fleet of thousands of warships. They were one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, second only to the Council itself. Lord Commander Thrak of the Dominion stood from his seat. His reptilian form towered 9 feet tall, covered in scales that shifted from green to black. The human speaks of Article 7, but perhaps she should read Article 3 first. It clearly states that territorial disputes between member species must be resolved through strength. If humanity cannot defend its worlds, then they do not deserve to keep them. Those aren't territorial disputes, Sarah protested. Your forces attacked without warning. You bombarded civilian cities from orbit. You're taking people as slaves. Labor redistribution, Thrak corrected with a smile that showed rows of sharp teeth. A common practice among advanced civilizations. Perhaps if humans had developed proper defensive capabilities instead of spending their time on primitive pursuits, this situation would be different. The council chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. She had expected this reaction, but experiencing it firsthand still stung. The galactic community viewed humans as barely evolved primates who had stumbled upon space travel by accident. Furthermore, Thrak continued, I propose that the Council formally recognize Dominion authority over all human colonies beyond Earth itself. Clearly, this young species has expanded too quickly and cannot maintain proper control of their territories. We are simply providing necessary guidance. You mean conquest, Sarah said flatly. I mean civilization, Thrak replied. Your species has existed for a mere 200,000 years. Mine has records dating back 3 million years. We have forgotten more about galactic civilization than humanity has ever learned. This is not conquest, human. This is education. Supreme Counselor Zerath raised what might have been an arm. The proposal has been made. According to Council law, we must vote. All in favor of recognizing Dominion authority over human colonial worlds. Sarah watched in growing despair as appendages, tentacles, and other alien limbs rose throughout the chamber. The vote wasn't even close. Only a handful of species abstained, and none voted against the measure. The motion passes, Zerath announced. The Dominion Empire is hereby granted administrative authority over all human colonies beyond the Sol system. This council recommends that Earth itself refrain from further expansion until such time as your species has matured sufficiently to participate in galactic society. Sarah felt the words hit her like physical blows. 3 colony worlds with over 50 million human inhabitants had just been signed away like items on a grocery list. This is wrong, she said, her voice carrying despite not shouting. You all know this is wrong. The Dominion attacked us because we refused their demands for our resources. They wanted to strip mine our worlds and take our people as slaves. And you're rewarding them for it. Young species often mistake necessary guidance for oppression, said Ambassador Vex of the Altarian Confederacy. The being's translucent form pulsed with different colors as it spoke. In time, your people will understand that this decision was made for your own benefit. The Dominion will teach you proper galactic protocols. We don't need their teaching, Sarah said. We need justice. We need the Council to enforce its own laws about unprovoked attacks on member species. The attack was not unprovoked, Thrak interjected. Humanity's rapid expansion posed a threat to established order. We merely acted preemptively to maintain stability. Sarah wanted to scream at the twisted logic. Instead, she took a deep breath and played her last card. Then, I formally invoke humanity's right to trial by combat, as outlined in Article 19. The chamber went silent. Even the constant clicking of the vortex ceased. Trial by combat was an ancient right, rarely invoked in the modern era. It allowed a wronged species to challenge their oppressor to a military engagement with terms set by the Council. Thrak's scales shifted to a deeper black, a sign of amusement among his kind. You cannot be serious. Your entire fleet consists of, 30 vessels? I have 300 warships in my 7th fleet alone. This would not be combat. It would be extermination. Then, you should have no problem accepting, Sarah said calmly. Zayrath leaned forward, shadows writhing around the being's form. Ambassador Chun, I must advise against this course of action. Article 19 permits the challenge party to set the terms of engagement. Lord Commander Thrak could simply choose to face your entire military with his full fleet. The result would be the annihilation of humanity's defensive capabilities. Understand, Sarah said. I do not think you do, Zayrath continued. When your species loses this combat, and you will have no legal recourse. The Dominion would have won the right to claim not just your colonies, but Earth itself. Your entire species would become subject to their rule. Understand, Sarah repeated. But I also understand that standing here begging for help that won't come isn't going to save those 50 million humans on our colony worlds. If the Council won't protect them, then we'll do it ourselves. Thrak's laughter boomed through the chamber. Very well, human. I accept your challenge. And, as is my right, I set the following terms. The combat will take place in the Kepler 442 system in 30 standard cycles. I will bring my 7th fleet, 300 vessels strong. You may bring whatever ships your primitive species can muster. When we destroy them, Earth and all human territories become part of the Dominion Empire in perpetuity. Agreed, Sarah said without hesitation. The council chamber erupted in conversation. Many species were already placing bets on how long the human fleet would last. The general consensus seemed to be measured in minutes rather than hours. This council session is adjourned, Zayrath announced. May the void have mercy on humanity, for the Dominion will not. As Sarah left the chamber, she passed by Thrak. The massive reptilian leaned down, his breath hot against her face. Your species shows spirit, mammal. I almost regret having to extinguish it. Almost. Sarah met his predatory gaze without flinching. Lord Commander, there's something you should know about humans. We've been fighting each other for our entire history. We've gotten very, very good at it. Thrak's teeth glinted. Fighting with primitive projectile weapons on a single world is rather different from warfare in the void of space, little human. Your species has participated in exactly 0 interstellar conflicts. Mine has conquered hundreds of species. You're right, Sarah admitted. We've never fought in space before, but we've been preparing for it since we first looked up at the stars. And there's one thing you should understand about humanity, something your advanced civilization seems to have forgotten. And what is that? Thrak asked, amusement clear in his voice. We don't fight fair when our families are threatened, Sarah said quietly. Enjoy your confidence, Lord Commander. In 30 days, you'll learn why humans became the apex predators of our world. She walked away, leaving Thrak staring after her. Around them, alien representatives continued their discussions, most already dismissing humanity as a soon-to-be footnote in galactic history. None of them noticed Sarah touching her ear, activating a quantum communication device that connected directly to Earth. Admiral Morrison, this is Ambassador Chun. Code Black. Repeat, Code Black. Authorization, Thunderchild. The gloves are off. On Earth, in a bunker buried beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Admiral James Morrison received the message and felt his blood run cold. Code Black meant humanity faced extinction. Thunderchild meant all restrictions were lifted. The gloves are off meant exactly what it sounded like. Morrison turned to his aide. Contact the shipyards. Tell them to accelerate Project Hellhound. And wake up the Marines. All of them. Sir, all of them? Even the ones in deep freeze. Every last one, Lieutenant. And prep the dimensional drives. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten humanity's children. The aide paled but saluted sharply. Yes, sir. Should I inform the colony worlds? Negative. Let the Dominion think they're helpless. Meanwhile, start Operation Trojan Horse. I want our special packages delivered to every major Dominion military installation within 20 days. As orders flew across Earth's military networks, humanity's true nature began to stir. For 3 years, they had played nice with the galactic community, showing only what they wanted others to see. 30 converted cargo ships, and some basic energy weapons. A species new to space travel, fumbling with technology they barely understood. The truth was quite different. In hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, vessels that defied galactic standard construction hummed with barely restrained power. These weren't the crude conversions the galaxy had seen. These were purpose-built warships, designed by a species that had turned warfare into both an art and a science. The galaxy thought humans were primitive because they still used projectile weapons. They didn't realize that humanity had simply found ways to make projectiles very, very effective. When you could accelerate a tungsten rod to 90% the speed of light, it didn't matter that it wasn't a fancy energy beam. But the real secret, the one that would soon shock the galaxy, wasn't the weapons. It was the warriors who would wield them. The United Earth Marine Corps was unlike any military force in galactic history. Where other species had evolved beyond physical combat, relying entirely on ship-to-ship battles, humans had asked a different question. What if we could bring the fight inside enemy ships? In cryo-storage facilities across Earth and her hidden colonies, hundreds of thousands of Marines began the awakening process. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were volunteers who had undergone genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, and training that would be considered torture by most galactic standards. Each Marine could survive in vacuum for limited periods. Their bones were laced with carbon fiber. Their muscles were enhanced with synthetic fibers that provided 3 times normal human strength. Their reaction times were boosted by neural implants that made them faster than any unaugmented being. But their greatest weapon wasn't their enhanced bodies. It was their minds. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, able to track prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. That same relentless determination had been refined and weaponized. Marines were trained to never stop, never quit, never surrender. They would complete their mission or die trying, and sometimes not even death was enough to stop them. As Earth prepared for war, the galaxy continued its business, unaware that it had just awakened something ancient and terrible. Humanity's greatest trick wasn't hiding their technology. It was hiding their nature. For 3 years, they had shown the galaxy civilized diplomats and merchants. They had hidden the warriors, the strategists, the species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. The Dominion Empire had threatened humanity's children. The colonies weren't just territory to humans. They were communities, families. 50 million souls that the galaxy had just condemned to slavery. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had a saying, demons run when a good man goes to war. And humanity had just declared war. 20 days had passed since the Council's decision. On the Dominion battle cruiser Shadowclaw, Subcommander Velk performed his routine inspection of the sensor stations. The massive vessel orbited New Haven, one of the 3 conquered human colonies. Below, Dominion forces were busy processing the human population for labor redistribution. Any signs of human fleet movement? Velk asked the sensor operator, though his tone suggested he expected the same answer as the previous 19 days. Negative, Subcommander. Earth's defensive fleet remains in orbit of their homeworld. The converted cargo vessels show no signs of departure preparation. Velk's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. As expected, the humans were paralyzed by fear. In 10 more days, Lord Commander Thrak would arrive with the 7th Fleet and utterly annihilate whatever pathetic force the humans managed to assemble. It would be a massacre that would echo through galactic history as a warning to other young species who forgot their place. Subcommander, another operator suddenly called out. I'm detecting an anomaly in Cargo Bay 7. What kind of anomaly? Velk asked, irritation creeping into his voice. The cargo bay held processed materials from the planet below, nothing that should cause sensor anomalies. Unknown, sir. The internal sensors are weight. I'm reading a massive energy spike. Before Velk could respond, his world exploded into chaos. The entire cargo bay detonated with the force of a small nuclear weapon. But this was no simple explosion. The device that had been hidden inside a routine cargo container was something far more insidious. A dimensional resonance bomb. The explosion didn't just destroy matter. It created a localized rift in space-time that began eating through the ship like acid. Bulkheads designed to withstand capital ship weapons crumbled like paper. The rift expanded, consuming everything it touched and converting it into pure energy that fed back into the reaction. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the Shadowclaw. Velk rushed to the command station, his training taking over. Seal all sections around Cargo Bay 7. Activate emergency. He never finished the sentence. The rift reached the ship's main power core, and the resulting explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The Shadowclaw, a battle cruiser that had served the Dominion for over 200 years, ceased to exist in less than 30 seconds. Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. Hidden in routine shipments, disguised as everything from food supplies to raw materials, humanity's special packages revealed their true nature. Of the 300 ships in the 7th Fleet, 43 were destroyed outright. Another 67 suffered severe damage that would take months to repair. On the Dominion throne world, Lord Commander Thrak received the reports with growing rage. His scales had turned jet black, a sign of fury among his species. Ow! He roared at his intelligence officers. How did primitive humans create weapons we can't even detect? The devices appear to use a form of dimensional manipulation we've never encountered. One officer reported, trying not to cower. They were specifically designed to evade our sensors by appearing as inert matter until activated. We've analyzed the residual signatures, and I don't want analysis. Thrak slammed his clawed fist onto the command table, leaving deep gouges in the metal. I want answers. How did a species that only discovered FTL travel 3 years ago develop weapons that could destroy our most advanced warships? The truth was something the Dominion couldn't conceive. Humans hadn't developed these weapons in 3 years. They'd been working on them for decades before first contact. While the rest of humanity celebrated joining the galactic community, Earth's military had asked different questions. What if the galaxy wasn't friendly? What if humanity's worst fears about hostile aliens proved true? Project Hellhound had been the answer. Hidden research stations had worked on weapons designed to fight a technologically superior enemy. If you couldn't match their shields, bypass them entirely. If you couldn't match their sensors, create weapons that didn't register as weapons. If you couldn't match their numbers, make sure each strike counted for maximum damage. Back on New Haven, Colonial Governor Krex surveyed the burning remains of what had been a Dominion processing center. The attack had come from nowhere. One moment, his troops had been loading humans onto transport vessels. The next, explosions had rippled through the facility with surgical precision. Governor, his aide approached nervously. We've lost contact with all processing centers on the Western continent. Satellite imagery shows nothing. They're just gone. Gone. Krex repeated. 3,000 troops and facilities designed to withstand orbital bombardment don't just disappear. Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures at the sites. They match the dimensional weapons that hit our fleet, but the pattern is different, more controlled. And, sir, there are life signs moving away from the blast sites. Human life signs. Krex felt a chill run down his scales. That's impossible. The weapons destroy everything in their radius. Not these ones, sir. These were selective. They only targeted our forces and structures. The human prisoners are unharmed and are now moving toward the wilderness regions. Before Krex could process this information, alarms began blaring throughout his command center. Governor, we're detecting incoming objects from orbit. They're moving too fast for our point defense systems to track. The kinetic bombardment struck with the force of divine judgment. Tungsten rods, accelerated to near light speed, punched through the atmosphere like the fingers of an angry god. Each impact released energy equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon, but without the radiation. Dominion military installations across New Haven were deleted from existence in seconds. But the orbital strikes were just the opening act. As Dominion forces scrambled to respond, the drop pods began falling. Hundreds of them, heat-shielded containers that looked like metallic tears against the burning sky. They struck the ground with earth-shaking force, embedding themselves deep into the soil. The pods cracked open with hydraulic hisses, and humanity's true warriors emerged. The Marines that stepped onto New Haven soil were barely recognizable as human. 7 feet tall in their powered armor, they moved with a grace that belied their bulk. The armor itself was a masterwork of human engineering. Reactive plating that could shrug off energy weapons. Strength amplification that let them tear through standard bulkheads. Life support that could keep them fighting in any environment from the vacuum of space to the methane atmosphere of a gas giant. Gunnery Sergeant Maria Rodriguez was the first to step foot on New Haven in combat. Her armor's HUD immediately populated with tactical data, enemy positions, civilian locations, primary objectives. She opened a comm channel to her squad. "All right, devil dogs, you know the drill. We're here to liberate our people and show these scale-faced bastards why you don't mess with human colonies. Rules of engagement are simple. If it's Dominion, it dies. If it's human, we protect it. Questions? Just one, Gunny." Private Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "Do we have to keep count, or can we just go with all of them for the after-action report?" Despite the situation, Rodriguez smiled inside her helmet. "Thompson, if you can count that high, I'll buy you a beer when we get home. Now move out. Liberation protocols are in effect. Let's show these aliens what happens when they threaten our families." Across New Haven, similar scenes played out as Marine units hit the ground running. The Dominion had expected resistance, but not like this. Their doctrine called for space battles followed by orbital bombardment and then occupation. They had no frame of reference for enemies who bypassed the first 2 steps and went straight for their throats. In the colonial capital, Governor Krex watched his tactical display in growing horror. Every Dominion position was under assault simultaneously. The humans weren't just attacking. They were systematically dismantling his entire occupation force with surgical precision. "How many enemy soldiers have landed?" he demanded. "Approximately 10,000, sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "But, sir, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. They're using some kind of coordinated swarm tactics. Small units hitting multiple targets, never staying in one place long enough for us to respond." 10,000. Krex couldn't hide his disbelief. "I have 50,000 troops on this planet." "Had, sir," the officer corrected quietly. "Current estimates put our effective strength at 30,000 and falling." On the ground, the Marines demonstrated why human warfare doctrine had evolved differently than the rest of the galaxy. Where other species relied on massive firepower and shields, humans had perfected the art of mobility and violence of action. Corporal Jake Wilson's squad approached a Dominion detention center where 3,000 human colonists were being held. The facility was defended by a full company of Dominion warriors, secure behind energy shields and automated defense turrets. "All right, people," by the numbers, Wilson commanded. "Davis, you're on overwatch. Kim and Patel, prepare breaching charges. Everyone else, weapons free on my mark." The Dominion defenders never knew what hit them. The first sign of attack was when their shield generators exploded from sniper fire that somehow penetrated their defenses. Davis was using rounds specifically designed to phase through energy shields, another gift from humanity's paranoid weapons developers. The breaching charges weren't explosives in the traditional sense. They were miniature dimensional resonators that created temporary holes in reality. The squad flowed through the breach like water through a broken dam, weapons chattering in controlled bursts. Dominion warriors were tough. Their scales could deflect most energy weapons, and they were stronger than unaugmented humans. But the Marines weren't unaugmented, and their weapons weren't energy-based. Hypersonic ferromagnetic rounds punched through scales, armor, and cover with equal ease. The Marines moved with choreographed precision, each member covering specific angles, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no safe spaces. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 90 seconds. 100 Dominion warriors lay dead. The Marines hadn't lost a single member. Detention center secure, Wilson reported, beginning liberation of civilians. Inside the center, the human colonists watched in awe as the armored figures efficiently cut through their restraints. Many were crying, having believed they would never see freedom again. United Earth Marines, ma'am, Wilson said to an elderly woman who stared at him in shock. We're here to take you home. But the Dominion fleet, she stammered. They said Earth abandoned us, that no one was coming. Wilson's helmet retracted, revealing a scarred but smiling human face. Ma'am, Earth never abandons her children. And in about 10 days, the Dominion is going to learn that lesson the hard way. Similar scenes repeated across all 3 occupied colonies. The Dominion had expected to face a demoralized, poorly equipped human military in a hopeless last stand at Kepler, 442. Instead, they were fighting for their lives on worlds they thought secure. But the real shock was yet to come. As Dominion forces struggled to respond to the Marine assault, new reports began flooding in. Human ships, real warships, not the converted cargo vessels the galaxy had seen, were appearing throughout Dominion space. They weren't moving through hyperspace. They were using something else, something that let them appear and disappear at will. Dimensional fold technology. Another secret humanity had kept hidden. While the galaxy used predictable hyperspace lanes, humans had developed a way to fold space itself, creating shortcuts that bypassed normal travel limitations. It was energy-intensive and had limited range, but it made human ships nearly impossible to intercept. Lord Commander Thrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Apex Predator, reading report after report of attacks on Dominion installations. Supply depots destroyed. Communication relays eliminated. Military bases reduced to smoking craters. And everywhere, those damn Marines, striking from nowhere and vanishing before retaliation was possible. Lord Commander, his intelligence officer approached hesitantly. We've completed our analysis of the human attacks. There's a pattern. Speak, Thrak growled. They're not random strikes, sir. Every target has been specifically chosen to cripple our ability to maintain the occupation. They're not trying to destroy us outright. They're systematically removing our ability to project power while liberating their colonists. Thrak's scales shifted through various colors as he processed this. You're saying they're not fighting to win. They're fighting to make us lose. Yes, sir. And there's more. We've intercepted communications suggesting this is just the first phase. They call it preparing the battlefield. The real engagement is still set for Kepler, 442 in 10 days. Then we crush them there, Thrak declared. Rally all available ships. If the humans want to concentrate their forces for a final battle, we'll oblige them. Order the recall of all vessels from the occupied colonies. We'll need every ship for this. It was exactly what humanity had planned for. As Dominion ships began withdrawing from the colonies, Marine units shifted from assault to defense, preparing for the liberation fleet that was already en route. The colonies would be free before the battle even began. On Earth, Admiral Morrison studied the tactical display showing Dominion fleet movements. They're pulling everything back for Kepler, 442. Current count, 217 combat-capable vessels converging on the system, sir. They've even pulled ships from border patrol duties. Morrison nodded. And our forces? Operation Haymaker is proceeding on schedule. All battle groups report ready. The Marines have secured primary objectives, on all 3 colonies. Civilian evacuation has begun. Good. Morrison turned to his staff. Ladies and gentlemen, in 10 days, we show the galaxy why humanity survived every predator, every disaster, every challenge our world threw at us. We're not the apex predators of Earth because we're the strongest or the fastest. We're apex predators because we're the smartest and the most adaptable. He paused, looking at each officer in turn. The Dominion thinks this will be a simple fleet engagement. They're about to learn that humans don't fight simple wars. We fight to win by any means necessary. And when you threaten our children, we don't just fight. We annihilate. The countdown to Kepler 442 had begun. The galaxy watched, most still betting on Dominion victory. They had no idea that humanity had spent the last 3 years pretending to be prey. In 10 days, the predators would reveal themselves. The Kepler 442 system had been chosen as the battlefield for a simple reason. It was empty. No inhabited worlds, no civilian traffic, nothing but a dying red star and some worthless rocks. The perfect arena for what many expected to be humanity's last stand. Lord Commander Thrak stood on the bridge of the Apex Predator, surrounded by the might of the Dominion 7th Fleet. 217 warships hung in perfect formation, their combined firepower enough to crack small moons. Against them, according to long-range sensors, the humans had brought 37 vessels. Pathetic, Subcommander Velk commented from his station. He had survived the destruction of the Shadow Claw and burned for revenge. They couldn't even manage 40 ships for their final battle. Do not underestimate them, Thrak warned, though his tone suggested confidence. The humans have proven resourceful. All ships maintain formation until we understand their capabilities. Energy weapons to full charge. Prepare for long-range engagement. 20 light minutes away, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Normandy, humanity's flagship. Unlike the elaborate, ornate bridges common in galactic vessels, the Normandy's command center was Spartanly efficient. Every surface served a purpose. Every station was positioned for maximum effectiveness. Dominion fleet maintaining standard assault formation, his tactical officer reported. They're preparing for traditional line engagement tactics. Morrison almost felt sorry for them. Almost. All ships, Phase 1 is go. Let's show them why humans study history. The human fleet began to move, but not in any formation the Dominion recognized. Instead of forming battle lines, the ships scattered, accelerating in seemingly random directions. To Thrak, it looked like panic. They're breaking formation, Velk exclaimed. The cowards are trying to flee. All ships pursue and destroy. Thrak ordered. Don't let a single human vessel escape. The Dominion fleet surged forward, their perfect formation breaking apart as ships moved to intercept fleeing human vessels. It was exactly what Morrison had anticipated. The Dominion, like most galactic powers, had forgotten the lessons of ancient warfare. They fought in 3 dimensions but thought in 2. Phase 2. Morrison commanded calmly. Execute. Space behind the advancing Dominion fleet suddenly writhed with dimensional distortions. 30 more human ships folded into existence, having used their dimensional drives to jump from the opposite side of the system. But these weren't the cobbled-together vessels the galaxy expected. These were purpose-built killers. The UES Vampire was typical of her class. Long and sleek, she looked more like a massive rifle than a traditional spaceship. Her entire hull was essentially a coil gun, designed to accelerate projectiles to percentages of light speed that made Einstein nervous. She carried no energy weapons, no fancy shields, just speed, armor, and the ability to throw chunks of metal so fast they hit like nuclear weapons. Captain Lisa Park watched her targeting computer calculate firing solutions. All rail batteries. Target the heavy cruiser at bearing 27 Mark IV. Fire on my mark. The Dominion had seconds to realize their mistake. Their fleet was scattered, pursuing what they thought were fleeing prey. Their rear was completely exposed to the new arrivals. Their shields were configured to deflect energy weapons, not kinetic strikes moving at relativistic speeds. Mark, 30 human ships fired simultaneously. Each vessel launched multiple projectiles, filling space with invisible death. The rounds were simple tungsten rods, some with depleted uranium cores, others with more exotic materials. But at 90% the speed of light, the material barely mattered. E=mc² became a very unfriendly equation. The Dominion heavy cruiser Bloodfang was the first to die. 3 tungsten rods punched through its shields like they were made of tissue paper. The kinetic energy released inside the ship was equivalent to several nuclear detonations. The Bloodfang didn't explode so much as it converted into an expanding cloud of plasma and elementary particles. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Dominion ships designed to withstand sustained energy weapon bombardment crumpled like tin cans hit by sledgehammers. The human projectiles didn't just penetrate. They transferred so much kinetic energy that ships literally shattered from the impact. Impossible. Thrak roared as he watched a third of his fleet vanish in the opening salvo. Their weapons. How can primitive kinetics penetrate our shields? His science officer's scales had turned pale with fear. Lord Commander, their projectiles are moving at near light speed. Our shields are designed to disperse energy, not solid matter moving that fast. The physics we never considered. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Thrak commanded. Return fire. Destroy those vessels. The Dominion fleet tried to respond, but they were facing a problem that had plagued military forces throughout history. They were fighting the last war. Their tactics, their technology, their entire doctrine was based on energy weapon exchanges at specific ranges. The humans had brought kinetic weapons that ignored those rules. Meanwhile, the original 37 human ships had stopped fleeing. They turned as one, revealing their true nature. These weren't converted cargo haulers. They were specialized marine assault carriers, and they'd been closing the distance while the Dominion was distracted. Phase 3, Morrison announced. Launch the Hounds. From the assault carriers, thousands of smaller craft erupted like angry wasps from disturbed nests. These were marine boarding pods, each carrying a squad of humanity's finest killers. But mixed among them were hundreds of decoys, electronic warfare drones, and specialized breaching craft. The Dominion point defense systems, already struggling to track relativistic projectiles, were overwhelmed. For every boarding pod they destroyed, 3 more got through. The human craft moved in seemingly chaotic patterns that were actually carefully orchestrated swarm movements designed to overwhelm targeting computers. On the Dominion battleship Conqueror's Pride, alarms screamed as multiple hull breaches were detected. Captain Krex, no relation to the colonial governor, rushed to the internal security station. What's happening? Multiple boarding pods have attached to our hull, the security officer reported. They're using some kind of dimensional cutter to breach. By the void, they're already inside. The Marines of Strike Team 7 entered the Conqueror's Pride like a force of nature. Their armor systems had already mapped the ship's interior using deep scanning sensors, and each Marine knew exactly where to go. They moved in perfect synchronization, a single organism with multiple bodies. Sergeant David Chun led his team through the corridors at a dead sprint. Dominion warriors tried to establish defensive positions, but the Marines didn't give them time. Flash grenades that overloaded multiple spectrums of vision preceded them. Hypersonic rounds cut through hasty barricades. When the Dominion tried to seal blast doors, the Marines used dimensional charges to create their own doors. Engineering in 30 seconds, Chen called out, not even breathing hard despite the sprint. His enhanced physiology and powered armor made the pace effortless. Ramirez, you're on Overwatch. Williams and Thompson prepared debt charges. Everyone else, clear and secure. They burst into engineering to find a dozen Dominion warriors making a last stand around the power core. It was a massacre. The Marines moved like dancers in a carefully choreographed ballet of death. Each movement flowed into the next. Each shot was perfectly placed. The Dominion warriors, despite their strength and training, were simply outclassed. Charges set. Williams reported as the last Dominion defender fell. All teams, Phase 4 is go. Chun announced over the tactical net. Light them up. Across the Dominion fleet, similar scenes played out. Marine boarding teams had specific targets: power cores, shield generators, weapon systems, and command bridges. They weren't trying to capture the ships. They were turning them into very expensive debris. Back on the Apex Predator, Thrak watched his fleet die around him. His tactical display showed ship after ship going dark as Marine teams completed their missions. The human capital ships continued their relentless kinetic bombardment, each salvo precisely timed to hit Dominion vessels just as their shields failed from internal sabotage. "Lord Commander," his communications officer called out, voice cracking with fear. "I'm receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Morrison wishes to speak with you." "Put him through," Thrak growled. Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. The human looked calm, almost serene. Behind him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. "Lord Commander Thrak, I'm calling to offer you the chance to surrender. You've lost half your fleet, and my Marines are currently aboard another 60 of your vessels. This battle is over." "Never." Thrak's scales turned black with rage. The Dominion does not surrender to primitives. Morrison's expression didn't change. "Lord Commander, I need you to understand something. This isn't a battle. It's a demonstration. We're showing the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's children. Right now, my orders are to disable your fleet. But if you continue to resist, those orders will change." "You think you've won?" Thrak snarled. "This is one fleet. The Dominion Empire commands thousands of ships. We will burn Earth to cinders for this insult." "No," Morrison said simply. "You won't." Something in a human's tone made Thrak's scales shift uneasily. "You speak with confidence for someone commanding less than 100 ships." Morrison smiled then, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Lord Commander, do you know why humans became the dominant species on Earth? It wasn't because we were the strongest. Bears were stronger. It wasn't because we were the fastest. Cheetahs were faster. It wasn't even because we were the smartest. Dolphins and octopi showed comparable intelligence." He leaned forward. "We dominated because we were the most cooperative. A human alone is weak. A human tribe is unstoppable. And right now, Lord Commander, you're not facing a human fleet. You're facing the entire human race." "Meaningless philosophy," Thrak spat. "Is it?" Morrison touched a control on his command chair. "Let me show you something. Tactical. Display Operation Ragnarok." The main screen split, showing multiple star systems. Thrak's blood went cold as he recognized them. Dominion shipyards, supply depots, military installations throughout the Empire. And in each system, human ships were appearing. Not dozens, hundreds. "That's not possible," Thrak whispered. "You don't have that many ships. The entire human fleet is here." "The entire human military fleet is here," Morrison corrected. Those are civilian vessels, mining ships with reinforced hulls and kinetic weapons. Cargo haulers carrying boarding teams of military veterans who volunteered to come out of retirement. Private yachts with dimensional drives and nuclear warheads. You see, Lord Commander, when you threatened our colonies, you didn't just threaten our military. You threatened our families, our children, our future. The implications hit Thrak like a physical blow. You armed your entire civilization. We armed anyone who volunteered, Morrison confirmed. Turns out, when you threaten to enslave 50 million humans, a lot of people volunteer. Every human who could fly a ship, hold a weapon, or push a button wanted to be part of this. We had to turn people away. On the tactical display, Dominion installations began to burn. The civilian ships weren't as advanced as military vessels, but it didn't need to be. They had numbers, determination, and the element of surprise. More importantly, they had targets that weren't expecting attacks in the heart of Dominion space. "You planned this," Thrak said, understanding dawning. "The challenge, the 30-day window, you were mobilizing your entire species. Every factory retooled for weapons production. Every shipyard working around the clock. Every human contributing however they could. Scientists designing new weapons. Engineers building ships. Children collecting scrap metal. Elderly people volunteering for suicide missions." Morrison's voice hardened. "You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Congratulations. You taught us that we have to fight for it. Another alarm blared on Thrax Bridge. Lord Commander, we're detecting massive dimensional distortions throughout the system. Something big is coming through. Space twisted and writhed as humanity's true surprise revealed itself. The UES Terra's vengeance folded into existence, and with it came a collective gasp from every Dominion bridge. The ship was impossible. A full kilometer long, bristling with weapons, it looked less like a spacecraft and more like a flying fortress. That's not possible, Thrax science officer stammered. A ship that size can't use dimensional drive. The power requirements. Humans are very good at doing impossible things, Morrison said conversationally. We've been working on her for 50 years. She was meant to be our guarantee against hostile aliens. Turns out we were right to be paranoid. The Terra's vengeance opened fire, and the results were apocalyptic. Spinal-mounted mass drivers launched projectiles the size of buildings. Each impact deleted Dominion ships from existence. Secondary batteries filled space with smaller, but no less deadly rounds. Point defense systems created walls of metal that shredded fighters and boarding pods alike. But the true terror of the Terra's vengeance wasn't its weapons. It was what it carried. Bay doors opened along its hull, and out poured assault ships. Each one carried a full battalion of Marines. These weren't the surgical strike teams that had hit the fleet. These were conquest forces. All Dominion forces, Morrison announced on an open channel. This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. You have threatened our colonies. You have enslaved our people. You have awakened something that should have been left sleeping. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue to resist, and we will show you why humans are the monsters of our world. Across the battlefield, Dominion ships began to surrender. Captains who had served for centuries, who had never known defeat, powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. They had faced many enemies, but never one like this. Never a species that turned warfare into something personal. Thrax stood on his bridge, watching his fleet die or surrender around him. His great Seventh Fleet, the pride of the Dominion, reduced to floating scrap in less than an hour. And throughout Dominion space, the situation was repeating as humanity struck with the fury of a species pushed too far. Your answer, Lord Commander? Morrison asked quietly. Will you surrender, or shall we continue this demonstration? Thrax scales cycled through colors of defeat. In 300 years of service, he had never imagined this moment. The Dominion 7th Fleet surrenders, he said, each word like poison. We yield to United Earth forces. Wise choice, Morrison nodded. Stand by to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. As Marine boarding craft moved to secure the surrendered vessels, Morrison turned to his staff. Phase 5. Signal all civilian militia forces to cease offensive operations and maintain defensive positions. Begin humanitarian operations for liberated colonies. And prepare a diplomatic packet for the Galactic Council. Sir, his communications officer looked confused. What message for the Council? Morrison's smile was sharp as a blade. Simple. Humanity's children are off limits. Any species that forgets this lesson will receive a reminder. We've been members of the galactic community for 3 years. It's time we introduced ourselves properly. Across human space, the victory was celebrated, but it was a grim celebration. Humanity had revealed its true nature, and there was no going back. The galaxy now knew that humans were not the helpless primitives they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had turned survival into a science and warfare into an art. And they protected their own with a fury that made demons flee. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as death. Every representative, from the crystalline Zephyrians to the gaseous Nebula Collective, stared at the holographic displays showing the aftermath of Kepler 442. The mighty Dominion 7th Fleet, reduced to surrendered hulks or expanding debris fields. Dominion installations throughout their empire burning. And human ships, far more than anyone had imagined possible, maintaining defensive positions around liberated colonies. Supreme Counselor Zerath's shadow form writhed with what might have been anxiety. The ancient being had presided over the council for 3 millennia, had seen dozens of minor conflicts resolved through strength. But this was unprecedented. "Play the recording again," Zerath commanded, though its voice carried an undertone of disbelief. The hologram shifted to show Admiral Morrison's transmission, sent to every major government in the galaxy. The humans stood in dress uniform, flanked by representatives from Earth's various nations. Behind them, a view screen showed human ships maintaining order in former Dominion space. Members of the Galactic Council. Morrison's recorded voice filled the chamber. "I am Admiral James Morrison, speaking on behalf of United Earth and her colonies. 30 days ago, this council sanctioned the theft of human worlds and the enslavement of our people. You told us this was the natural order, that the strong take from the weak." Morrison paused, his eyes seeming to look directly at each representative. "We have now demonstrated that humanity is not weak. The Dominion Empire's 7th Fleet has been neutralized. Their occupation forces have been expelled from our colonies. Their military infrastructure within striking distance of human space has been eliminated." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber, but the recording continued. "But we are not conquerors," Morrison said. "We have taken no Dominion worlds. We have enslaved no Dominion citizens. We have done only what was necessary to protect our people and ensure this never happens again. The message is simple. Humanity wishes to be part of the galactic community, but we will not be victims. We will not be slaves. And we will not allow our children to be threatened." The recording paused, and Morrison's expression softened slightly. "We know many of you are wondering how a species that only achieved FDL 3 years ago could do this. The answer is simple. We lied." That statement sent shockwaves through the chamber anew. "Humanity has been spacefaring for over 50 years, Morrison continued. "We developed FDL 20 years ago. We've been watching, listening, learning. We kept ourselves hidden because we needed to understand what kind of galaxy we were entering. When we finally revealed ourselves 3 years ago, we showed you what we wanted you to see. A young, relatively harmless species eager to join the community." Morrison's smile was rueful. "We hope we were wrong about the need for deception. We hoped the galaxy would be more enlightened than our own history suggested. The Dominion proved otherwise. So now you see our true face. Not the face of conquerors, but of protectors. We will trade peacefully with anyone who approaches us peacefully. But those who threaten our people will learn why humans are the only sapient species on our planet." The transmission ended with Morrison's final words. "The liberated colonies are under United Earth protection. Any attempt to retake them will be considered an act of war against all humanity. We await the Council's response. Choose wisely." As the recording ended, the council chamber erupted in dozens of conversations. Representatives who had laughed at humanity 30 days ago now spoke in hushed, worried tones. "Order," Zerath commanded, its form expanding to fill more of the central platform. "We will have order. Ambassador Chun, you have been recalled to address this council. Explain your species' deception." Sarah Chun stood at the same podium she had occupied a month ago. But where she had stood alone then, now she was flanked by armored Marines. Their presence was symbolic, but effective. The message was clear. Humanity would no longer be isolated or unprotected. "Supreme Counselor," Chun began, her voice calm and professional. "What deception? We never claimed to be helpless. We simply didn't advertise our full capabilities. Is it not the right of every species to maintain military secrets? You deliberately misled this council." The Altarian representative pulsed with angry colors. "You presented yourselves as primitive newcomers." "We presented ourselves as new to the galactic community," Chin corrected, which was true. As for being primitive, she gestured to a Marine who activated a holographic display. "This is the human technological tree. As you can see, we developed along different paths than most galactic civilizations." The display showed humanity's unique approach to technology. Where most species had focused on energy weapons and shields, humans had perfected kinetics and armor. Where others used predictable hyperspace, humans had developed dimensional folding. Where others relied on AI and automation, humans had enhanced themselves. Your entire civilization is militarized. Accused the Vorthack representative, its clicking mandibles conveying disgust. Even your civilians participated in military action. When 50 million of our people were condemned to slavery, yes, civilians volunteered, Chen replied evenly. Tell me, Ambassador, if your hatchlings are threatened, would your people not defend them? Or are humans unique in protecting their young? That silenced the Vorthack. Defending offspring was a universal instinct. Lord Commander Thrak entered the chamber then, his scales dull with defeat. The once proud warrior moved slowly, as if bearing invisible wounds. He took his place at the Dominion platform, ignoring the stares of other representatives. Lord Commander, Zayrath addressed him. You have faced the humans in battle. What is your assessment? Thrak was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. They're not like us, he said simply. We fight for resources, for glory, for dominance. Humans fight for survival. We wage war. Humans baja extermination. Explain, Zayrath prompted. When we took their colonies, we expected surrender or token resistance, Thrak continued. Instead, they mobilized their entire species. Children collected materials. Elders volunteered for suicide missions. Their media stopped entertainment broadcasting to run military training programs. Their corporations ceased profit-seeking to produce weapons. They turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed at anyone who threatened their people. Thrak turned to look at Chen. Your species frightens me, human. Not because of your weapons or your tactics, but because of your unity. When threatened, you stop being individuals and become something else. Something terrifying. Chen nodded respectfully. We call it humanity, Lord Commander, and you're right to fear it. But you need not face it if you don't threaten us. The question before this council, Zayrath interjected, is what to do about your species' violations of council law. You attacked a member species without council approval. You have destabilized the established order. What you call protection, others might call aggression. Chen's expression hardened. With respect, Supreme Counselor, the council forfeited any moral authority when it sanctioned slavery. You can censure us. You can declare us outcasts. You can even try to destroy us. But know this, humanity will never again allow our people to be threatened without response. Never. She paused, letting that sink in. However, we prefer peace. We propose a new framework for council membership, one that recognizes the right of species to defend themselves and their colonies without seeking permission from those who would see them enslaved. One that acknowledges that might does not make right. You seek to reshape galactic law because you want a single battle? The Krillian ambassador's tentacles writhed in what might have been amusement. Chen smiled coldly. No, we seek to reshape galactic law because we can win every battle. Would you like a demonstration? The threat was delivered so casually that it took a moment to register. Then, the council chamber erupted again as representatives realized the implications. Humanity hadn't shown their full strength. What they had seen was a limited response, a police action. The real human military hadn't even been fully deployed. Perhaps, a new voice said, we should listen to what the humans propose. The speaker was Ambassador Vri of the Celestial Harmony, one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the galaxy. They have shown both strength and restraint. They could have taken Dominion worlds, but didn't. They could have slaughtered civilians, but didn't. They fight like demons, but offer peace like angels. This paradox intrigues me. Other representatives began nodding. The display of human power had shaken them, but the restraint shown was equally important. A species capable of such destruction that chose not to use it except in defense was something new in galactic politics. What exactly do you propose? Zayrath asked Chun. Chun activated her own holographic display, showing a new charter. The Halifax Accord, named after the city where Earth's nations agreed to unified action. Its principles are simple. No species may take another's worlds by force. No species may enslave another's people. Any species attacked without provocation has the right to defend itself without seeking council permission. And any species that violates these principles faces the combined response of all signatories. A mutual defense pact, Zerath mused. You seek to create a military alliance within the council. We seek to create accountability, Chen corrected. For too long, this council has allowed might to make right. Younger species are preyed upon by older ones under the guise of natural order. We propose an order based on mutual respect and protection. And if species refuse to sign? The Altarian asked. Then, they continue under current council law, Chen replied. But they forfeit protection under the accord. Attack a signatory. Face all signatories. The implications were staggering. Humanity was essentially offering to be the military backbone of a new order, protecting species that couldn't protect themselves. It was both generous and cunning. Species that joined would be grateful to humanity. Those that didn't would think twice before threatening anyone under human protection. This is blackmail, the Dominion representative finally spoke. Join humans or be vulnerable to them. No, Chen said firmly. Join the accord or continue as you are. We won't attack non-signatories who leave us in peace. But we won't protect them either. The choice is yours. Hours of debate followed. Some species saw the accord as salvation, others as subjugation. But gradually a consensus emerged. The display of human power, combined with their restraint and offer of protection, was too compelling to ignore. The first to sign was the celestial harmony. We have watched for millennia as younger species were consumed by older ones, Ambassador restated. Perhaps it is time for a change. Others followed. The smaller species, those who had lived in fear of larger neighbors, practically rushed to sign. Even some middle powers saw the benefit of alliance with humanity. By the end of the day, 37 species had agreed to the Halifax Accord. The Dominion, notably, did not sign. Neither did several other major powers. But they also announced no intention to challenge the new order. The demonstration at Kepler 442 had been too clear. Humanity could defend itself and its allies. As the session concluded, Lord Commander Thrak approached Chun. You realize what you've done? He asked quietly. You've made your species the guardians of the weak. Every threatened people will call on you. Every conflict will demand human intervention. You've taken on a burden that will define your species for generations. Chun met his gaze steadily. Lord Commander, humans have a saying. With great power comes great responsibility. We have the power to protect those who can't protect themselves. How can we not use it? Thrak's scales shifted to a color Chen hadn't seen before. Later, she would learn it indicated respect. Perhaps I underestimated more than your military capabilities. Perhaps I underestimated your character. We all make mistakes, Chen offered. The question is whether we learn from them. Indeed, Thrak agreed. He turned to leave, then paused. Ambassador, a word of warning. You've shown the galaxy that humans are dangerous when threatened. Some species may decide to strike first next time, before you can mobilize. Watch your backs. Chen nodded. We always have, Lord Commander. We always have. As the council chamber emptied, Chen stood with her marine escorts, watching the star field through the transparent wall. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors. It was a heavy burden, but one they would bear. Think we did the right thing, Ambassador? Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez asked quietly. Chen considered the question. Humanity spent 50,000 years learning to work together, Sergeant. Learning that our strength comes from protecting each other. Now we get to teach that lesson to the galaxy. Aura, Rodriguez replied simply. In the weeks that followed, the Halifax Accord grew from 37 signatures to over 100. Species that had lived in fear found courage knowing humanity stood with them. Pirates and slavers found their traditional hunting grounds suddenly very dangerous. And throughout human space, the victory at Kepler 442 was commemorated not with parades or monuments, but with a simple phrase that became humanity's motto among the stars. We protect our own. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Halifax Accord now included over 300 species, making it the largest alliance in galactic history. Human marines had become a common sight on worlds that once trembled at the thought of invasion, their presence alone enough to deter most threats. On the paradise world of Cerulean Prime, Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the memorial gardens with an unlikely companion. Lord Commander Thrak, now retired from military service and serving as a peace envoy for the reformed Dominion Republic, matched her pace along the crystalline pathway. 5 years, Thrak mused, his scales shifting to contemplative blue. Has it truly been only 5 years since my fleet burned at Kepler? Time moves strangely when everything changes, Chun replied. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime. They paused before a monument that had become famous throughout the galaxy. It was elegantly simple, a human child's hand reaching up to touch an alien claw, surrounded by inscriptions in 100 languages. All carried the same message: we protect our own, and we are all one family. You know what still amazes me? Thrak continued. Your species had every right to conquer after your victory. You had the power, the justification, the momentum. Yet you chose protection over dominion. Chun smiled softly. A human philosopher once said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. We didn't want to rule the galaxy. We wanted to change it. And change it you have, Thrak agreed. The slave markets of Orion Sector have been closed for 3 years. Pirates flee at the mere rumor of human patrols. Species that huddled in fear now trade freely under Halifax protection. It hasn't all been smooth, Chun reminded him. The Hegemony War tested us, and we lost good people. The Hegemony War had been humanity's greatest test since Kepler, 442. A coalition of species that resented the New Order had united to break human influence. They had expected to face the same humans who fought at Kepler, dangerous but limited in number. They had not expected to face the entire Halifax Accord fighting as one. Human strategic doctrine, Altarian energy weapons, Zephyrian shield technology, Vorthack industrial capacity, all united in common cause. The war had lasted 6 months and ended with the hegemony's complete capitulation. But you prevailed, Thrak noted, and showed the galaxy that the Accord was more than just human strength. It was genuine unity. Their walk was interrupted by a commotion near the memorial's entrance. A group of young beings of various species were gathered around a figure in marine dress blues. Chun recognized Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, now Master Sergeant Rodriguez, conducting one of his famous impromptu history lessons. So there we were, Rodriguez was saying to his rapt audience, outnumbered 50-1, with nothing but our rifles and bad attitudes. The Dominion warriors were tough, I'll give them that. But they made one crucial mistake. What mistake? A young Zephyrian asked, its crystalline form pulsing with excitement. Rodriguez grinned. They threatened our colonists. Never threaten a human's family. We get unreasonable about it. The youngsters laughed, but Chun noticed several adult aliens nodding knowingly. The galaxy had learned that lesson well. Even now, some species spoke of human madness, the terrifying transformation that occurred when humans felt their loved ones were in danger. Master Sergeant, Chun called out, I hope you're not filling young minds with war stories. Rodriguez snapped to attention with parade ground precision, though his eyes twinkled. Just explaining ancient history, Ambassador. These younglings wanted to know why the memorial shows a human child and a Dominion adult together. Because that's what peace looks like, Thrak answered, moving forward. The youngsters gasped at seeing the famous Lord Commander in person. Former enemies choosing friendship. The strong protecting the weak. Different species becoming one family. A small Altarian, barely out of its chrysalis phase, piped up, Lord Commander, is it true you fought the humans? I did, Thrak admitted, and I lost. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. The youngsters looked confused, so Thrak elaborated. Losing to humans taught me something important. There is no honor in oppressing the weak. True strength comes from protection, not predation. Humans knew this. It took the rest of us longer to learn. As the impromptu lesson continued, Chen's aide approached with an urgent message. Ambassador, priority communication from Earth. Admiral Morrison needs to speak with you immediately. Chen excused herself and found a private communication booth. Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking older but no less determined than he had 5 years ago. "Sarah, we have a situation," Morrison began without preamble. "Deep Space Monitoring has detected something troubling. A fleet approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Design and technology unlike anything in our databases." Chun felt her blood chill. "How many ships?" "Conservative estimate? 5,000. Could be more. They're moving in perfect formation at speeds that shouldn't be possible. ETA to the outer colonies is 6 months. Are they hostile? Unknown. They're not responding to any communication attempts. But, Sarah, their trajectory takes them straight through Halifax space. Whatever they want, they'll reach our protectorates first." Chen's mind raced through implications. An unknown force, possibly hostile, heading for worlds under human protection. The Halifax Accord would be tested like never before. "I'll convene an emergency session," Chen decided. "Full Accord mobilization. Whatever these beings are, they'll find the galaxy united." Morrison nodded. "I'm recalling all deep space patrols and activating the reserves. The shipyards are moving to emergency production. If this turns hostile, we'll be ready." After ending the communication, Chun found Thrak waiting outside. The old warrior's scales had shifted to combat-ready black. "I overheard," he said simply. "The Dominion Republic stands with humanity. Our fleets are at your disposal." "We don't even know if they're hostile," Chun pointed out. "No," Thrak agreed. "But they're heading for worlds under Halifax protection. That makes it our concern. All of ours." Within hours, the news had spread across the galaxy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species after species announced their readiness to defend the Accord. Fleets began gathering at staging points. Industrial worlds shifted to war production. The galaxy prepared for a threat they didn't yet understand. On Earth, Admiral Morrison stood in the Strategic Command Center, watching as humanity's true strength revealed itself once more. Not just the rebuilt fleets or the veteran Marines, but the unity of purpose. Shipyard workers pulling double shifts. Scientists sharing their most guarded research. Children organizing supply drives. "Sir," his aide reported, "Halifax Accord forces are mobilizing faster than our best-case projections. Current combined fleet strength approaching 8,000 vessels, with more arriving hourly." Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. 5 years ago, humanity had stood alone against the Dominion. Now, 300 species stood ready to face the unknown together. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson. We protect our own. In her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony, Chen received update after update. The Celestial Harmony's ancient fleets, not seen in battle for millennia, were powering up. The Vorthak hives were producing warriors at unprecedented rates. Even former enemies like the hegemony remnants were offering support. But perhaps most touching were the messages from the smallest Accord members. Species with only a handful of ships, offering everything they had. Worlds that existed peacefully under Halifax protection, sending their best to defend others. The memorial's inscription made manifest, "We are all one family." Rodriguez found her there, reading messages with tears in her eyes. "Problem, Ambassador?" the Marine asked gently. Chen shook her head. "No, Master Sergeant. No problem. Just look at this. 5 years ago, they laughed at us, called us primitives. Now they stand with us against the unknown. We changed them." "With respect, ma'am, I disagree," Rodriguez said. "We didn't change them. We reminded them. Every species wants to protect their young. We just showed them it was possible to protect everyone's young." A new message flashed on Chen's screen. Long-range sensors had managed to get clearer readings of the approaching fleet. The ships were massive, technological marvels that made even humanity's best look primitive. But there was something else. Something that changed everything. "My God," Chen breathed. "Rodriguez, look at this." The Marine leaned over, reading the sensor data. His expression went through several changes before settling on wonder. "Are those generation ships?" "Colony vessels," Chen confirmed. "Massive ones. The weapons signatures we detected, they're defensive systems. This isn't an invasion fleet. It's a refugee convoy." The implications were staggering. Thousands of ships carrying unknown billions, fleeing from something beyond the galactic rim. Whatever had driven them to undertake such a journey had to be terrifying beyond measure. "Orders, Ambassador?" Rodriguez asked. Chun straightened. "Decision made. Signal all Halifax forces. Stand down from combat alert, but maintain defensive positions. Prepare for the largest humanitarian operation in galactic history." And Rodriguez, "Mom, wake up every Marine we have. If these beings are running from something, we need to be ready for whatever might be chasing them." As the galaxy pivoted from war preparations to refugee assistance, Chin couldn't help but reflect on the journey. 5 years ago, humanity had revealed themselves as warriors to protect their own. Now, they would reveal themselves as protectors of anyone who needed it. The approaching fleet began to slow, apparently detecting the massive Halifax forces arrayed before them. Then, for the first time, they transmitted a message. It was simple, broadcast, and mathematical concepts that any spacefaring species could understand. "We flee the Devourers. We seek sanctuary. We have children." Chun felt her throat tighten. Across every Halifax ship, the response was the same. "No debate. No hositación. No conditions. Just a fundamental truth that had reshaped the galaxy. We protect our own, and you are welcome to our family." The unknown fleet's response was a surge of signals that the translators eventually decoded as relief and gratitude. But buried in the data streams was a warning. The Devourers were coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. The refugees had fled across the void itself to escape them. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled over the command net. "All Halifax forces, this is Supreme Commander Morrison. We have refugees incoming and a potential threat behind them. I want defensive positions maintained, integration teams prepared, and our fastest scouts pushing beyond the rim to give us early warning. Whatever these Devourers are, they'll find the galaxy ready. Think we can stop them?" Rodriguez asked Shin quietly as they watched the refugee fleet approach under Halifax escort. Shin thought about humanity's journey, from a single world to protectors of the galaxy, from feared warriors to beloved guardians, from alone to family of hundreds of species. 5 years ago, Master Sergeant, 37 species stood with us. Today, over 300 stand ready. Tomorrow, who knows? But whatever comes, we'll face it together. Rodriguez nodded, then smiled. "Aura, Ambassador." Though about to say, retirement looked a lot quieter in the brochure. Chun laughed, the sound carrying across the bridge. When has humanity ever done things the quiet way? As the refugee fleet entered Halifax space, surrounded by protective formations from 100 different species, the galaxy demonstrated what it had learned from humanity. The strong protect the